The emails and the text messages and the IMs and the DMs and the special M's and the M&Ms and all the things that I needed to get from my legions of fans clamoring for more freelance teacher. Here you go. We're on. This is live. It is Monday afternoon, and it's Regents Week in the high schools. So what does that mean in my high school and many of the schools around me? What it means is that students come in to do nothing but take their Regents exam. If you have a Regents exam, that's the New York State Education body, the New York State Education Department, as these gigantic school buses go by. Serendipity, right in front of you. Look it up. And so the students come in New York to take their state test. There's a state test, and there are 5 that you need to pass to get your just general basic high school diploma. I believe the number is 8 if you want what's called an advanced Regents diploma. Okay. I don't know who cares about that kind of stuff. Maybe some colleges. So it's Regents Week, and everyone takes their whatever subject test in January that they need to. Usually they're done in June, but in January the Regents exams are offered for makeups, or if you are ahead or behind, you can come in and take a state test. That's required for graduation. So I had as an English teacher, I proctored the special education room, one of the special education rooms of the English Regents, and I was in the room where the test was read to the students. Now, what I mean by that is every word of the exam was read to the students, from the directions, the passages, the questions, the answers to the multiple choice questions, everything. The directions to the writing part, the passages that went along with the writing part, everything read aloud. Why? Because the student has a file as a special education student that requires the school to read the question aloud to the student. Okay, all right, that student needs the exam read aloud. And I'm really going to throw this back at you. I'm not going to tell you what the answer is because I don't know if I have a good answer to the obvious question that everybody watching this, right, when this goes viral, when everybody watching this is going to have the same question. What happens when high school is over? Then what? I mean, it's a great question. Do you get the ingredients on the side of a can of Hawaiian Punch read aloud to you? I don't think so. If a box of cereal has a patch on it that says non-GMO project, is that read aloud to you? I don't know. Are the directions to the new flat panel smart TV read to you? They weren't read to me. My mom is 70, and I installed her smart TV for her. She probably could have handled it herself, but it was good practice for me to do stuff like that because I need all the technological and mechanical practice I can get. But they weren't read to me. I had to open up the thing, and yeah, there were a lot of pictures, but there was stuff to read as well, and no one was there to read it for me, nor had anyone been there, they wouldn't have volunteered or probably taken me up on if I had asked them to read it to me. So you see where I'm going with this. You do want to help students. The idea is, and I need to stress this because a lot of times this becomes the de facto mental position of people who listen to this. And they think that the principals and the assistant principals and the teachers are kind of like they're either like liberal loon white weirdos who give everything to students and just, hamstring them for life with these ridiculous policies that are too soft. Or that they're some kind of beastly libertarian anarchists who throw kids into the deep end of the pool and say, sink or swim, punk. Figure it out, jerk. Well, none of those stereotypes is true. The majority of the staff I work with simply want students to do well. Now, with this case, the state requires that special education students have the exam read aloud to them. And some of them, from what I could tell, it was helpful. A couple of the students in the room paid rapt attention, and it helped them get through the material. And interestingly enough, because they all had multiple levels of time and a half, double time, right? They could use 3 hours or 4.5 hours or 6 hours if they needed it. Every single student just about finished within the 3-hour window. Part of it is I read so well, right? I mean, hello, right? I was the reader. Is this some kind of intelligence test? So they did it and they used it and it helped. But I have to worry, as do many people. How valid is that as an exam grade, right? Let's say a student gets a 67, passing. Did that student pass the English Regents? I don't know. Does the grade mean that that student now has fulfilled the requirements of a high school graduate, and the local store down the street assumes that student can handle what is required? It's serious issues, and it's where instead of saying, "Oh, that's terrible, we should never do that," I mean, I can see that case as well. I can also see the case that says, well, we have to help students and practice literacy and in some way get some kind of literary material by them. Those people have a case too. It's not so easy, is it? You're trying to do many things, and that's where this kind of one size fits all. I always go back to John Taylor Gatto's The Underground History of American Education. I look at podcasts for this reason. I like School Sucks podcast, a guy named Brett Vanott that runs that. Liberty Classroom, Tom Woods. Renegade University, Thaddeus Russell. All of these things. Praxis, the site that gets you internships without going to college. All of these things I think are fantastic. Why? Because it's not one size fits all. New York State says, pass these 5 exams and you are a high school graduate, and with the requisite credits from the school, of course, right? You have to pass English, pass phys ed, those kinds of things. Well, most people say, okay, well, that student has passed this threshold, therefore has this garden variety general level of intelligence and a capability in math and English and history and science and the languages and things like that. No, it's not the case. You have everyone, especially now, with all of the various venues and all of the various outlets for a person to show their talent. That high school diploma, to me, now seems very staid, very wooden and stiff and limited, because I have now more than ever students that just don't fit into that mold. I don't know what it is. And remember, you hear this a lot too. You hear, well, in this era of technology, the young people can... Well, for those young people, right, my seniors, remember, born in 2000 my seniors were born in the year 2000. Born. So to them, this isn't like this new era of technology. It's just the era. That's just what they know. So they've grown up with outlets for creativity, ways to take in information. And yes, like all young people, they use amazing technology for wasted foolishness, right? You got to expect that from young people and teenagers. Hell, I used the printing press to memorize hundreds of years, cumulatively, of course, of Major League Baseball history. Right? Yeah, Pete, I checked. I used the baseball almanac. Was it the baseball encyclopedia? I had a gigantic newsprint book of baseball stats because I wanted to see if Pete Rose, at the end of his career, managed to keep his lifetime batting average over 300, which he did. But it was close. I think he finished with a 303 lifetime batting average. So now you go to baseballreference.com and you find the same thing in 12 seconds. But my point is, with the power of books, and I used it to look at tiny numbers on a page for lifetime baseball averages. Okay. Maybe Gutenberg didn't envision that as his main focus when he invented the printing press. But you see my point. So all of these things, like there's so much dynamism and so many ways to do things, especially now, and outlets for creativity and ways to bring in information that, I was proctoring this exam and reading the words off of a white piece of paper that was sent from the state, and while reading these things, and the students answered multiple choice questions, which were read to them. And then the directions to the written passages were read to them. They had to actually do the writing. Although there are some aspects of special education where the student is allowed to have a scribe. I wasn't in that room, but they exist. So it comes back to maybe what system is the best system. I'm not sure. I really don't know. But I do think a large issue, a large problem with the way things are now is that you'll have more and more. This is where I do kind of side with the, hey man, the school's not holding up its end of the bargain. It's dumbing the American population down. Public school has turned into a joke. It creates armies of students unprepared for life. Those people have a point, and I think they have a better point, because that aspect of school has grown and grown and grown, where the rights and the entitlements within the school have grown way faster than the responsibilities of the student. And ask anyone. I was talking with a teacher assistant, and she was around my age, and she went to the school where I work. She went to Mount Vernon High School, and her description of what it was like when she went there, it was like she was talking about an entirely different state, an entirely different school. What she told me was not the environment I'm in. So, and a lot of that is the leadership, mostly at the state, right? We're talking about state government, not the people who showed up to lead the school now. They weren't running state education policy throughout the 1990s and the late 1980s and the early 2000s. And now it's, well, you have to do this for the students, and you have to do this for the students. And you rarely get where the student, here, do these kinds of activities, practice those activities, come in, and if you fail, you take it again, right? To some degree that still exists, but everything has been made easier. There's a scoring grid for the math, something like you can get something like a 42 actually aggregate score on the math and still get a 65, things like that have just never stopped. So I guess to sum up, to end this kind of rambling gab fest about education, I think some tightening of the screws would help in terms of student accountability. But a lot of that is culture of the school, where it starts, not necessarily making sure that the state educational policy gets changed. That's not going to happen, especially in New York. A Democrat liberal state like New York, you'll never get anything through that would ever make anyone have to work harder. It would just be to make things easier for voting blocks, for whoever's steering the ship, the teachers union or whatever. I don't know whoever has the biggest checkbook is basically going to run your state government. And you believe something else, you're being insufferably naive. So I guess the best thing to do is look into other options if the regular school, public or private, isn't really fitting the bill, of which there are many. And if you were wondering why there is a little bit more, or maybe in your case, in some of the listeners' case, a lot more high school unaccountability and incompetency among the teenagers, a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it is dealing with this move toward everything should be easier for everyone, and no one's feelings is ever allowed to be hurt. And that's unfortunate, because after high school, things oftentimes are not easy, and lots of people's feelings get hurt. And I don't like it any more than you do, but that's the way it is. And that's what we need to start getting used to and preparing kids for. All right, freelanceteacher.com, TFT Travel Group. I'll see you next time.